Our next session is Atmanirbhar Bharat, Wanted Manufacturing Havens. It's a $5 trillion dream, and if India has to realize that dream, then we need the country's manufacturing engine to fire at full power. Yet the popular narrative is that India is great for services, but not so much for manufacturing. But guess what? That narrative is rapidly changing. Don't take my word for it. Hear it from our expert panel comprising Mr. Arvind Meligiri. Sir, please join us. Chairman and CEO of ACIS, Mr. Akshat Saraf, Director of one of South India's largest steel producers, Radha Smelters, and Mr. Umesh Revankar, sir, please join us, Vice Chairman and Managing Director of Shriram Transport Finance Corporation. I invite the session moderator R. Sridharan to take it away.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Priya. So as Priya mentioned, the popular narrative so far has been that India is a great place to, make software, export software, but maybe not manufacture. But I have reason to believe, not just because Prime Minister Modi announced Make in India as an ambitious target for the country and said we should be a 5 trillion economy by 2025. The fact is, a lot of companies are now beginning to de-risk their China strategy, which has traditionally been the hub for manufacturing. And a lot of them are now looking at India as an alternate destination. Even large manufacturers like Samsung, Apple have moved manufacturing to India. So Arvind, I'm going to start with you because what ACIS has done over the last 10 years of your dedication is simply amazing work. You have set up a very successful SEZ in Belagavi, of all places, and you have Boeing and Airbus manufacturing there, components. So let us tell the people, how did you, work this miracle? How did you convince the two biggest, largest aviation companies to make parts in India?
Thanks, Sri. Look, India has always been a great engineering talent. We always had all our IT services and engineering services which came out of their engineering schools which were built upon over last 2-3 decades. And a lot of talent came out, and that's what happened. When we got into, we as a company, Quest Global, my other company, started doing engineering services, and we had customer like Airbus coming in there and doing engineering services. And we had to show them that, hey, we can do manufacturing also, initially to show them that capability is there to manufacture, and then further it went down, hey, when we started manufacturing, in-country value add was just 20%. Means we used to import everything, just process only 20% of the value and send it back. And we saw, as a services business, India, we were doing 100% in-country value add. So if you have to be competitive globally, leverage our labor, we have to increase the in-country value add. With that theme, we decided that we have to really do a large-scale manufacturing and build economies of scale, which China has done. And we have to combine the both. And if you really look at globally, manufacturing doesn't happen in cities. LA, New York, Paris don't do manufacturing. But in India, most of the time we get in manufacturing all around big cities because logistics, infrastructure, various other issues, and lifestyle, all those things. So we had to break that mold. So if you are really competitive in the long run, 2-3 decades, if you have to take a horizon, so you have to be in hinterlands where people are available, labor is cheaper, and also the land availability is also much, much better. So special economic zone was set up in Belagavi, which is a tier 3, tier 4 city. Umesh was just mentioning to me now that it's the 5th largest in the state of Karnataka, but it used to be 3rd largest one point in time. City has not really grown from the perspective of not many people who come and settle in Belgaum from outside, unless they have to come. But the point is, people are going out of Belagavi to other places to work. That has kind of stopped. We were able to attract talent, but we have to build this capability from scratch. Training, development, fresh out of school people, train them to deliver aerospace quality parts. Today, I can say that we pretty much have a part going from Belagavi on almost every aircraft which is delivered today in the world. Airbus, Boeing, and Bombardier, you name it, it goes from there. And we deliver as a single source so many parts, means they cannot get anywhere else those things except from us. That's what happened. And we are delivering on time and quality. For example, Airbus, we are delivered 100% on time, zero defects for last 18 months. We just received that notification. It's it's not unusual for a company sitting in place like Belgavi and doing it within aerospace industry.
And,
So
and
by-
with very little rejection rate, I'm
yeah,
told.
zero defects you have to have.
Amazing.
You can't have that.
Yeah.
So that is, you need to build means you have to invest, you have to take a long-term view, you need to build infrastructure where infrastructure is not there, and we have to have 100% uptime of power. All those things have to be built.
Right.
It's a long-term view.
Right.
Have to be taken.
So that's a lot of heavy lifting you've done over the last 10 years to make this happen, really, Arvind. So, kudos to you. How much of the government's focus on productivity-linked incentive, the PLI scheme, really helping manufacturers, because now the focus is on output rather than on just some random incentives. This is linked to your output and you're rewarded for higher output, right? So maybe once you give your thoughts, we can then ask, Akshat also to chip in with the answer.
Yeah, I think after the government's Make in India program, this is the first time they came up with the incentives actually to support Make in India, in my view. And that was driven predominantly to connect it to Atmanirbhar Bharat and make sure that India is self-sufficient with respect to capability, technology. And first set of incentives have gone towards reducing the technology dependence from outside, like high alloy steel, steel investments, and some of the automotive exports to support some of those things, and also what was taken away from WTI issues, and that has gone. But one thing I believe has not been focused on, the sectors where job creation is driven through the incentives. It's predominantly driven to the revenue, but job creation doesn't really reflect in any of the PLIs. I think it's a very, very important element. We should include that somehow. It's not easy, it's complicated, but nothing is easy in the world. So we have to find a way to do that, in my view.
Right. So, Akshat, your industry is probably one of the most traditional and very, very hardcore in the sense you make steel bars, and you just doubled your capacity. So what gave you the confidence to invest in a new greenfield entity? And you told me you doubled your revenues. So do you find the environment for manufacturing changing, improving, getting better in India?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like India is a great, great place to be right now, especially in the infrastructure or real estate space. If you look at the kind of infrastructure spending the government is doing, there's a huge, huge, huge influx coming our way. And besides that, the average per capita consumption of steel, the average steel that a person in India uses is 80 kgs. And the world average is 250 kgs. So that's not just the US or, countries like that, it's the world average. So that shows us, how much scope is there. And with this kind of scope, with this kind of infrastructure growth that the government is pumping in, whether you see the NHAIs, whether you see, local road developments or the ports that are being made, there's a lot of scope, and, that kind of gave us the confidence to, expand our production because there is demand. And besides that, like, Indian steel is being more and more accepted worldwide. Of course, the new export regulations are putting a damper on it, but overall, like, the last couple of years, especially post-COVID, have been really good for steel in India, and the prices have reflected that as well.
Right, so you all smiles.
So far, so good.
Excellent. So, Mr. Evankar, you have a different perspective on the whole industry. You're not a manufacturer per se, but you have the perspective of a logistics player. You are financing the logistics industry, especially trucks. How do you see the environment changing for the industry? Because logistics actually continues to be a big pain point even today for most manufacturers.
I would like to recall I was in Harvard in 2010. There was a case study on India. The economics professor, he made a case study of India, and he was talking about how India's infrastructure and how weak, how bad, how things are not running properly. Then he asked people who, there were 100 people in the class, and asked anyone of you, because they were all either CEOs or senior executives, would like to go and invest in India. None of them raised a hand. So from that day, I'm trying to understand what are the pain points in India, and trying to read mostly and try to understand, and also keep observing things, how things have moved. I think there was a serious attempt between 2010 to 2012 to build infrastructure in India. Most of them are PPP projects, and it went into certain challenges. And of course, post 2012 to maybe 14, there was not much of progress at all. From 2015 onwards, there has been good progress in building infrastructure, road infrastructure.
In fact, Umesh, just to add, this year may be an inflection point for infrastructure, because if you look at the PM Gati Shakti Yojana, which the finance minister announced in the budget, there's 7.5 lakh crore which has been allocated for infrastructure, along with a portion for state funding. So in some sense, I mean, we might be at an inflection point for infrastructure growth in this country. Right?
Huge, because there's a huge scope and opportunity. Today, the world money is chasing the area where there is a scope. Where people call it as a problem area. That is the area you make money, where you have some risk, but you make money. Now, if you look at India's logistics cost as a percentage of GDP, it is 14%. And world average, especially developed countries, it is around 8%. That means 6% is the additional cost. And Indian logistics business is $300 billion. And that means you can say that $180 billion is something which you can attack and reduce.
And we're still competing with the rest of the world. Despite this disadvantage.
We are. No, so out of this 14%, if you break it up, the transportation is 6%, warehousing is 4%, and inventory is 3%, and administration is 1%. That means India, there is too much of warehousing or inventory, mainly because there is nothing called just-in-time concept in India. Actually, the inventory or goods or raw material needs to be on the wheel at any point of time, so that there is a timely production and reduce the cost. Because whatever you hold or keep as inventory or in the warehouse, that is going to be a working capital cost. And you are going to pay interest. And of course, Indian interest rates are one of the highest in India.
And going up further.
So that is the challenge. So whether India can become a world leader, and whether it can change the course, I believe yes. Because if you look at India, is strategically located in between the China, the other part, and maybe the Europe and West.
Right.
And we have a large peninsula with coastal line.
Correct.
Huge infrastructure on the port is already been getting built. Now, if you look at the two tiny countries, which are just by providing a transit point or transport services, have done so well, Singapore and Dubai.
Right.
Tiny countries, they have done so well.
That's true.
Just by providing a service on a transit point. So India can go beyond a transit point.
Right.
India can be a transshipment point where the goods can come and go on through land to the neighboring countries.
Right.
Recently, there was a headline on north-south transport corridor. That has been first consignment has gone from India through the Iran to the Russian subcontinent, Russia. So, that reduced the number of days by 12 days, they said. Otherwise, to go to St. Petersburg, that is the other part of
45 days, I think.
Normally 45 days.
45
they said 12 to 15 days you are cutting short.
Yes.
Because India has invested in the port, in the Chabhar port in Iran.
Correct.
And that is going to give India a huge advantage going forward.
Right.
Imagine see what China is doing.
Right.
China is investing in the Gadwar port in Pakistan, the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, and trying to compete with India in Chittagong.
Right.
India
We'll talk about this in a little more detail subsequently. But, Arvind, While we say manufacturing and we tend to put it in one large bucket, the reality is we don't need to compete in everything. We don't need to make socks the way China does, or even make Ganapati idols the way China does. So we, as a engineering-driven country with high skills, with access to a lot of engineering population, are we better off focusing on certain kinds of manufacturing rather than saying, okay, let's make everything in this country? How should we cherry pick our fights in the international market?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at ACUS itself, we started with aerospace manufacturing because engineered products, highly engineered products. And a toy customer came to us, Hasbro came to us and said, hey, you have built this whole ecosystem through the partnership. We are buying everything from China. Is there, would you be able to do something toys in India? I said, I don't know whether it will be competitive. We are, but you are 1/3 of the wage of China, minimum wages. A lot of people. So we looked at this, and when we ran, we were cheaper than China.
That's amazing.
Toy manufacturing. So that opened our eyes because we are competing on a high-end engineering resources, highly precision machine products, and high capital in there. But toys is a much lower capital intensity, suitable for China because India for cost of capital is much higher, and labor content is 20%, whereas in aerospace it would be like much lesser, 6-7%. So combining those two, we saw toys as a much larger opportunities. I mean, not necessarily comparable because aerospace is much bigger in terms of size of manufacturing perspective, but opportunity for India where it is to where it could be was large when we saw. And India was doing only about $50 million worth of toys manufacturing for exports perspective especially.
I remember once as a young reporter doing a story on Walmart, and Walmart had trouble sourcing just for 1 year supply of toys from India because there was no manufacturer large enough to manufacture for Walmart, one retailer.
So
it's cottage industry.
Scale was missing in India. So we decided to build up an ecosystem. And today, we have manufacturing. We have close to 3,000 people working in toy manufacturing in Belagavi. And we are setting up a toy cluster in Koppal, first toy cluster in the country, dedicated for toy manufacturing ecosystem. So that can house 25,000 people working there. And with a full ecosystem built up, and logistics all the way connecting to Mumbai port through the train, rail logistics. Unless we have that kind of a full-fledged solution, we cannot compete with China.
Right.
So we don't need to be high-end because we're engineers, graduate engineers can only work. This is unskilled labor. You can train them within 3 months, put them on the job, they are production. So that is where the unemployment is.
Right. Okay. So a very interesting, Arvind, India, it's not the first time that, an SEZ like yours has, come up, but it's probably the first one which has become successful. For a long time, we experimented this whole template of trying to create SEZs across India, Haryana, Maharashtra. We toyed with that, but actually none of them really took off. So why did your experiment succeed when so many other experiments failed?
Because when 2007 timeframe when SEZs came, most people who got into developing SEZs were real estate people. They thought it was a real estate play. We can get in quickly, make plots or industrial plots, sell it to somebody, go on with life and do the next one. That's not reality. In manufacturing, what happens? You take a very long-term view, 10, 20, 30 years it takes to develop a cluster, ecosystem, industrial park. With all the infrastructure has to be day one, all the infrastructure. That's very, very, very expensive affair. You built over. So that's the reason why they've never developed. What they thought never happened. But we were a manufacturing-focused company trying to make sure all the infrastructure is there to make sure that we can deliver uninterrupted fashion to the customer. So it was a reverse for us.
Right.
So that's the reason we believe we were able to have vibrant 32 units operating in that cluster, and we continue to add more people, more units there.
Right. So Umesh, any thoughts on why the SEZs didn't take off, but it seems to be working here for Arvind?
No, I think it has started working off late, maybe 10, 15 years now. You go to Kerala, the plantation workers are Biharis. You go to the Tamil Nadu, in textile, most of them are either from Orissa or Bihar or the eastern part. You go to Surat, most of the workers are from Orissa, that part of it, or Jharkhand. That means the migration of labor has been happening for last 15, 20 years. And that's where Arvind is able to get a cheap labor. You can't get a labor locally in Tamil Nadu or maybe in Kerala, because maybe these economies have grown bigger or larger. They're able to get better job, or their income levels are high. I think the migration from the east to west or east to south, that has really changed. And if you're able to train them, build a facility, train them, then you have a game. So I think that's where Arvind has succeeded.
I have one comment I need to make, because 5,000 people who work in our zone, none of them are migrant.
Well, they are all local.
All local.
Fantastic.
100% local. They come from 60 villages, all about 1 hour away also, every day, and they go back home every night.
Right.
You know?
Excellent.
And the reason is everybody is trying to find people in the city. Migrant labor comes to the city because that's where they know they will find a job. But you go take your manufacturing into the hinterlands where the people are there.
But you have to spend a lot of time training them, right?
Exactly. No, training is always there. You have to do training, specific training. You go take manufacturing hinterland. Why are we setting up toy cluster in Koppal? Koppal is the least developed district of Karnataka. 34th district of Karnataka, developed district of Karnataka. There is no jobs there. Okay? In Hospet you go, other side where you have plant, you know, you have a steel industry.
Right.
This side you come to Gadag, you have agriculture. This is a complete dry land, get 4 rains a year at best. Okay? The people make meager income working 3 months a year. So you go there, we had just a request for application, we had 15,000 people line up for jobs.
Right.
From locals. So what I'm saying is people are available. You know, you need to provide jobs. You need to
And train them locally.
Yeah, train them locally.
Yeah.
We have a training center set up now. Everything is trained and people are going to start working. So the key is to go where people are.
Great. So Akshat, your industry, although it's about...
Logistics becomes a key at that time. You know, you're going to hinterlands. Logistics is very important.
Absolutely, yeah. So, you know, you are a steel manufacturer. I'm not sure how much of labor is a competitive advantage, but I think what you've done is essentially pick the segments where you want to compete in, which is technology, like high value added products in steel. So tell us, how are you becoming more competitive?
Our philosophy has always been to compete on the basis of quality and not on the basis of price. So that really kind of, gives us an edge over, what we're trying to do operationally as well. So while others are, trying to push out whatever volumes they can, whatever, a product they are able to make, we are competing on a different plane altogether. So that gives us a big price advantage, and, it gives us the leverage to also experiment with new technology. So we are mostly, besides our breakdowns, we're fully automatic now. We're fully automized. And, that a person just sitting there and pushing buttons is how work happens, as opposed to if you've seen an old style rolling mill.
Right.
There's a guy who physically picks up the billet and like turns it, and like he's sweating and it's hot, and like, it's an inhumane condition to work in. And sadly, a lot of plants in India are still working like that. So, automation is a big one for us. We do still rely on labor. It is essential for any manufacturing facility in India, I guess. But automation and technology upgradation, like we recently, kind of adopted a technology called LRF, which allows us to make alloy grade steel and, higher grades of steel that are used in critical infra. Typically, these would be limited to, the top players in India, like Tatas and Jindals. But now we are getting this technology because we are so focused on delivering a higher quality product, whilst our customers are still focused on, price, bottom line.
L1.
Yeah, just L1, and like, just trying to look at very short-term gains.
Right. So, Arvind, you travel the world. You have a manufacturing facility in US, you have a manufacturing facility in France, and you're going to be investing $1 billion in India. That's a huge sum of money. But tell me something, if there's one thing which the COVID pandemic has shown to the world, it's that how fragile the global supply chain really is. we're still dealing with disrupted semiconductor supplies, sensor supply from China, and there are, ships which are like docked outside of all these big ports in China, and with no merchandise to pick up. How is the post-COVID world looking to, basically de-risk its manufacturing bets? What are you hearing from the people, from the customers that you're meeting around the world?
Yeah, I just want to correct. We have invested about $500 million till now.
Another 500
Another
million will be
500
coming
in the
in.
next 10 years.
Yes.
Just wanted to. Look, global supply chain is fragile. Was fragile before the war, and war has made a mess out of the whole thing. Especially in aerospace industry where we are playing. Titanium is dependency of China, Russia has been very high. So luckily, during COVID, aerospace industry came down significantly. Volumes, the capacity was there, the inventory was there, which is being consumed right now to build alternate sources to Russia. That's what is happening today, because Russia was a critical aerospace player in the industry because of titanium, and that really interrupted everybody, and that has also pushed a lot of aerospace industry customers to look at, hey, if there were to have similar thing were to happen to the other large country, where would they go? Where would they go? So they see India as an alternate. India as an alternate, and they have to really de-risk. And some of these guys are 100% sourcing from China. Some of the products, 100%. And they need to see what, even if they start with 5%, maybe 10 years down the road, they may be 15, 20, 30%, maybe 50% out. They need to do that. And a lot of customers are very clearly saying, we just need an alternate. We just need an alternate who can deliver, within the range of cost.
So India is right there in that list of options, would you say?
Yeah, we are absolutely there, because just look at what alternates have. Vietnam, already saturated. Vietnam is size of Karnataka, if you really look at it. Yes,
no more
big,
room.
That's how the overall size is. The people and everything it comes down to. So the key comes down to India has the talent. India has the young, employable youth, what I would say.
Yeah.
And opportunity is there for India. There is no other country in the world who can provide this many resources. If we can address several of the issues what we have in terms of speed of doing things and bunch of activity issues, and this cannot stop, in my view. It just can speed up, but it can be slowed down, speed up, but it just will take. Train has left the station. India needs to make it easier.
Right. So the other thing, Akshat, the conversation which has now come to the table in the post-pandemic world is, earlier a manufacturer was basically, shipping out all the different parts that were going into making let's say an end product, where there were 100 suppliers working to help produce one particular product. But now, in the post-pandemic world, the conversation is going back to whether there is merit in being vertically integrated. So in your industry, vertical integration for you would probably mean going back to iron ore and all that stuff. So what is the thought process? How are you looking at this post-pandemic world?
So I feel like, again, coming back to quality, India and Indians are becoming increasingly quality conscious. And the only way to actually deliver, the best kind of product to your customers, to the nation, in fact, is to be fully integrated. And in my industry, it's the biggest players are obviously fully integrated. And it's a kind of necessity, because when you have to control costs and manage volumes of the tune of thousands of crores, you kind of have to look at every penny that you can save. So integration helps in both cost cutting as well as quality production. And it's actually evident. Like, you can look at all the government agencies that are procuring steel and even other products right now. They all opt for fully integrated plants only. And I see that trend increasingly. Obviously, steel, I've seen it firsthand, but even other industries. I was having a conversation with Mr. Arvind earlier also that, there's a lot of scope for things that are not even here in India right now. And yeah, so I feel like
I would like to add a couple of comments on that.
Yeah, sure.
The industry like steel, when you get into a vertical integration is possible, but industry like what we are in aerospace or toys, it is about partnerships. because you got to be good in what you are, okay? So if I'm a machining specialist, I need to be having high volume, high capacity, machining capacity. Then there is a forging guy who has to be partner with me, vertically integrated through partnerships. Not necessarily you have to own, but you have to be able to live with the pain of both of, whatever somebody feels the pain, other person also. Somebody coughs, other should catch, somebody catches cold, otherwise should. That's how it needs to be operating, because capital investment is very high when you try to vertically integrate it. Capital efficiencies typically could be challenged because utilizations and various things can happen. Yeah. When you are vertical, when you are specific focused guys, then your efficiencies are much better.
Right.
So that's the difference we see as a contract manufacturer, because we are driven towards the absolute utilization of assets.
And you are not cost plus, despite being a contract
manufacturer.
Yeah, we are
cost plus. We're always market minus. Yeah. We don't want to be cost plus. Because we have to be competitive. Cost is given, price is given. We have to be competitive.
Right. So, Umesh, some final thoughts on what the infrastructure or the logistics industry can really do to help and support the India manufacturing story.
Yeah, I think one of the challenge which internationally people have been recognizing is the ownership of the trucks or vehicles being fragmented and individuals being there. I think that was the challenge, but in India, people individually, they would like to own and run and operate. They would like to make their own living. And that's how it has remained for so long, because last 20 years, whenever the price went up, people felt that, okay, small guys will go, individual will go. It never happened in India. Maybe because they feel they're owner and they can make a sustainable income out of it. With technology coming in, like now the Uber and Ola has been providing the
aggregation,
model, that is really helping the small operators. And there are a lot of small players in the each of the geographies.
So efficiency is coming in logistics
slowly
as
coming
well.
in. Yeah. You don't have all India operator now. I think all India operator also will become, because it needs a lot of investment. The kind of investment Uber has made, I don't think anyone can make it and make it efficient in India, but it is coming.
Right.
So most of the large logistic player will be focused on building a integrated operation and providing the kind of service to individual operators. And thereby, I think it can become highly efficient is what I feel.
Right. So I think the verdict from our panelists is fairly clear. The Make in India story is not just talk, it's happening on the ground. And people like Arvind are testimony to the fact that even international manufacturers are willing to put their money where their mouth is. And hopefully, Arvind, we'll see your $500 million investment coming through. And maybe more SEZs coming up in other parts of India, not just Karnataka.
Yeah, I mean, look, we are, currently we have 3 zones going in Karnataka, because we felt that it's a right place with talent perspective and everything. So we're always open looking at other states, and we need to work with the governments to make these things happen. It's not easy. India is complex,
right.
But our job has been to provide a smooth opportunity to have a smoother operations for people who come from international market. They want to establish manufacturing. They can leverage what has been done by us last 15 years. They can come and establish facilities and leverage everything what we have done. And don't worry about whether it's India, it would have been same in US also, the way they operate.
Right. So thank you, gentlemen. More power to each one of you. And unfortunately, we don't have time for answers. That's what my producers tell me. With that, we'll wrap this session up. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.